All right, Jamie, let's get to some waiver wire names. Who are the top 3 priorities at quarterback?
Top 3 priorities at quarterback are, get ready for these names, Derek Carr, Will Levis, and Trevor Lawrence.
Derek Carr. All right. So Carr's been, got the MVS connection lately. He's got the Rams. Levis has Washington, and Lawrence has Houston. Surprised Lawrence isn't number 1. Is it just because we don't know he's going to play?
Correct. So if you want to play the game of, I could still get Carr, I could still get Lawrence. I'm sorry, I could still get Levis. You want to take Lawrence first, then absolutely take Lawrence first with the hope that he's healthy. But, it's a left shoulder injury. So that's the positive thing, that if he does, have any concerns, it's not his throwing shoulder. But I don't think there's a guarantee he's going to play yet. So that's the one thing that's a little bit of a drawback.
Okay, and then you get so many quarterbacks who are in that, it might be available in your league range. Guys like Caleb Williams, Anthony Richardson, Russell Wilson, who's got a great matchup. Cincinnati's an interesting matchup because they're good most weeks, but they're good
great against the run, bad against the pass.
But if you look at how they've done against quarterbacks, it's been 5 quarterbacks who have destroyed them, and it's like Lamar Jackson twice,
Lamar Jackson.
Right. Lamar Jackson, Jalen Hurts, Jaden Daniels, Jackson twice, and Justin Herbert. Everyone else has struggled, but I will say, they seem like a good matchup. So Russell Wilson, Richardson, Cousins might be available.
Right. Stafford and Cousins,
Caleb Williams.
Super shallow leagues might be there. You mentioned Caleb; he would be a good one.
Did you like Caleb this week though against the Lions? They have not given up multiple touchdown passes this year.
That's true. I would just say that he's going to have a lot of volume. I don't think that the Bears are going to be able to run a lot. Just the way that this game's going to go, their defense really hasn't looked good now for a couple of weeks, and the Lions should be able to put up points. It'll force Caleb Williams to throw a lot more.
I like Caleb Williams better than Russell Wilson this week.
You like him better than Trevor Lawrence, Derek Carr, Will Levis?
No. I would start those guys over Caleb. Just something about Russ feels off right now.
The thing about Caleb, right? I went back because I felt like when we talked about it on Sunday, Anthony Richardson, he just played the Lions. Now Caleb's playing the Lions. I felt like there were these missed opportunities, and I went back and I watched the throws from Anthony Richardson, and I found more than 200 yards of missed opportunities on either bad throws or like very close plays, like Ashton Doolin couldn't get his foot in bounds on that deep ball, and Ogletree dropped the touchdown, 11-yard touchdown. Detroit's defense was not. Yeah, right. That play was like kind of miscommunication. There were so many big plays that they almost made. The bad throw to Pierce that could have been a huge play. So I don't know. Like Detroit's been pretty good all year, but they had a lot of wide open guys, which is I think encouraging for Richardson and maybe for Caleb Williams.
Well, I would agree with that, and that kind of jives with the fact that remember in the second half he didn't have a very good completion rate at all. Richardson was under 30% completion rate, but his off target rate wasn't crazy. So that kind of plays into it, that maybe just a lot of miscommunications and the duel and play, the drops and all that. Caleb Williams made a bunch of outstanding throws when you go back and watch the film. Some of them were really dangerous. There's like 4 throws where like the Vikings were inches away from an interception. And on all 4 of them, he's completing these awesome darts to his wide receivers. And so if he's going to have volume and he throws like that against the Lions, then he could end up having a pretty good game. If he was out there, I would pick him up ahead of Levis and those other quarterbacks.
And look, it could be one of those pick him up. You don't have to use him this week. Pick him up and see where it happens.
He could be your bye week quarterback in week 14 if you wanted.
Absolutely. So who does Caleb? Well, all right. We'll get it. You tell me who he has in week 14. Let's go to the running backs.
At San Francisco. If Bosa's not playing, that's fine.
Okay. Jamie, the running backs, I'll give it to you again. We've talked about this, but let's repeat it. Who are the top running backs to get?
The top 2 are easy. It's Edwards and McNichols, just with the opportunity for both to get starting jobs. I like the matchup better for Edwards. Both guys not going to be heavily involved in the passing game based on their profile and what they've done so far this season. So give me Edwards against the Falcons as opposed to McNichols against the Titans. The third running back is a little bit trickier. I think you're looking more handcuff / long-term. So it could be Trey Benson. It could be Roschon Johnson. Right now I have Johnson as the third guy, but it just depends on what you need. Dave mentioned the matchup is not great for him. I think either the rest of the season for the most part. But he has played more under Thomas Brown. Remember, we thought, okay, maybe it was a groin injury was the reason why he played more snaps and Swift played less snaps. Swift was still under 60% snaps for the second week in a row, and Roschon got the touchdown again. So he's touchdown dependent, but just given the nature of what we're looking at from a waiver wire perspective, he may fall in the end zone against Detroit. So that's something that gives him a little bit of an edge over the other guys.
we agree on the names. We disagree on the order just because I'll take McNichols first, but it's only as a 1 week option. If you're looking long term, I would take Gus first. Number one, McNichols isn't going to have that job in Washington forever. Number two, the Commanders are on bye in week 14. We don't know the severity of the Dobbins injury. Dobbins could be back next week. We just don't know. But if he's out for the year, then Gus Edwards is viable as a potential starter for the rest of the season. Roshan is third. I also wanted to make mention of Tank Bigsby, who's 37% available. I got a lot of names on my list that are good to just stash. You're headed toward the playoffs. You've got some spots to play with. Maybe you want to play a little keep away from your opponents. Maybe you just want to fortify your depth. I think Bigsby is still the best running back in Jacksonville. I have no idea if he's going to start playing in week 13 because remember, he got hurt, he had an ankle injury. But I would try and stash him. Again, kind of a shallow league play because he's only available in less than 40% of CBS Sports leagues. But he's somebody that I would try and pick up. Nice schedule for Jacksonville the rest of the way, too.
By the way, speaking of shallow leagues, if Jalen Warren is available, he's like something like 75%.
28% available.
That's someone you should be looking at for sure. But Jamie, so you go Gus Edwards over McNichols, but Dave said Abdullah at the top of the show. If we throw him in the mix, I think he's 67% rostered. Where would Abdullah rank right now with Edwards and McNichols?
Edwards 1, Abdullah 2, McNichols 3.
Okay. Dave, who are the top wide receivers you want to get this week? Top 3.
Okay. So strictly using the 35% number that we use, Keenan Allen would be number 1. He's 39% available. There's a couple of stash players. One of them is Keon Coleman. So kind of in that same vein as Tank Bigsby. When he comes back, maybe he's something good for the Buffalo Bills passing game. Haven't seen Amari Cooper take that big leap yet. It's that outside wide out for them. Maybe it is going to be Keon Coleman. He's 39% available. And then the third name I have is Devon Vele. 96% available. That's one for the guys that are, none of these guys are available in my league. Yeah. We can both do it now. We can do it in unison. That'll be terrible. Vele has been the number 2 route rate guy in that receiving core for Denver for several weeks now. And I kind of think he's got that 12 PPR point floor going week in and week out. So that would be my 3. Keenan Allen 1, Keon Coleman 2, Devon Vele 3.
What about Elijah Moore? Assuming Tillman's out.
Yeah, it makes sense, especially in PPR. He'd be closer to that list, but he's not going to be in the top 3 for me.
You wouldn't start Moore over Devon Vele this week? If
they're almost the same guy.
They're playing each other.
I know.
Yeah.
I would rather start the receiver playing the Browns than the receiver playing the Broncos.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's like there's a little slot receiver against the Broncos. I don't know. Yeah. I mean, the Broncos are really good. Are they a little beat up in the secondary though? Because they did not, they had 2 receivers go over 80 yards, the Broncos, against the Raiders, Tucker and Myers.
Well, Tucker went over 80 yards because he had a big play.
Yeah.
So I don't know if it's because they're beat up. I'd have to double check that. We did see that Surtain was on Bowers most of the time. So that
no, he was not actually. I watched.
You went back and
Tucker more than anyone.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. So, but in the red zone, was it Bowers?
That like one play where I
thought it was multiple plays we saw.
Yeah, but it was mostly Tucker. Yeah, so Jamie's right. Moss got hurt. I thought they maybe had a safety out
true.
too. But
that's right.
All right, tight ends, Jamie. Who are the top 3 tight ends to get?
The top 3 tight ends to get this week would be all the guys that are in shallow leagues. If you can, if you're looking for the guys who are available, it's not pretty. Just let me get there.
Would Dissly be on the list?
No, he's rostered too many leagues. Cole Kmet would be 1. Noah Gray would be 2. And Schoonmaker would be 3.
So I know that we have some issues with the roster rates sometimes. He's actually 59% rostered, Will Dissly. So will he be number 1?
Dissly would be 1. Kmet would be 2. And Noah Gray would be 3.
Will Dissly, Cole Kmet, Noah Gray. And honestly, hopefully you have, Dissly, didn't have a great game yesterday, but they just didn't have a great game as a passing offense.
But his floor has still been pretty solid. That's now 6 of 7 games with 8 or more PPR points.
So you wouldn't get away from like Hunter Henry for Cole Kmet and Noah Gray, right?
No, Henry had 9 targets and 5 catches. He's still very involved. He just, Hooper scored a touchdown. I still think he's going to be a go-to guy for Drake May, just based on what we've seen. So the fact that he still had all those opportunities is what you're banking on.
Was anybody like Schoonmaker this week against the Giants?
No.
I don't mind him, but it's with the idea that he's in that same range as Kmet, that 8, 9, 10 PPR point range. And he got there last week because of the touchdown. It wasn't because of volume. I thought he'd have good volume. I kind of like Dowdle this week.
By the way,
I think the Cowboys are going to beat up the Giants, actually.
By the way, the Cole Kmet, the Lions give up the fewest fantasy points to tight ends, so it's really not
But
ideal.
You're looking at, again, opportunities. I mean, 10 targets. I know they threw it over, 47 times, but it's now 90% snap rate. Most of the season was last week, first game with Thomas Brown. 10 targets in this game. Coming off of that, we'll see. I like to see what they look like against a tight end that's featured, because they should have given up a touchdown to a tight end last week.
Oh, Ogletree, yeah. And I don't think they've given up a touchdown all season to a tight end. That would have been the first.
It was AJ Barner.
Right. Who are the top 3 DSTs, Jamie, or top however many?
Cowboys is number 1. Number 2 would be the Chargers. They're 63% roster against Atlanta. Giants would be number 3 against Dallas, 31% roster.
How are we feeling about Arizona? They have a pretty good playoff schedule. Someone emailed me and said, should I pick up Arizona for the playoffs? They're at Minnesota this week. So maybe
you can't use them this week.
But after that, they actually have a pretty good schedule.
I think you can't use them this week. They're still top 12 for me.
Against Minnesota?
You get some turnovers.
On the road, maybe they do. I would be hesitant. They've got Seattle, then New England, then at Carolina, then at the Rams. So there are some matchups that I think Arizona is viable. They'll be a top 12 unit. I would not trust them personally against the Vikings.
Shout out to random emailer for bringing that to my attention. I'm sorry, I don't.
It's Jim from the East Coast.
So is Dallas, the Chargers, and then the Giants? I think you got to be pretty desperate to go with the Giants.
The only positive for the Giants is that they've got a good pass rush, so maybe they get a few sacks.
Not even doing that lately.
But I mean, how do you take away what the Cowboys did on offense against Washington? They weren't a total disaster.
Would you go with the Eagles at Baltimore or the Giants on Thursday against the Cowboys?
Giants.
Eagles are pretty beat up right now. They had a bad week in terms of
their
injuries.
pass rush is definitely missing some talent.
And Darius Slay's in the concussion protocol.
In my rankings, as we sit here right now, I've got them back to back.
All right, Jamie, kickers.
Eagles ad.
Who are our kickers? I can read them if you want.
Are Chase McLaughlin, Will Lutz, John Parker Romo, Brandon McManus, and Blake Ruby.
Okay, there you go.